I just, I just wish people would sort of realize that we do a lot of other things than just this one extreme thing that people always sort of seem to brand us with. Up in the States and Europe over the last couple of years, I think people are finally starting to realize that Metallica does have a lot more to offer than just this one specific thing that we always end up being called and so forth. And, now we're down here in sort of, when I say unexplored territories, it's obviously virgin territories for Metallica. So I can sense in Australia, and so forth, where I just came from doing a lot of press, that, people still think we're maybe just slightly more remote out to the less extreme than we really are. But that's why it's great that we come down here and get a chance to play, and people get a chance to see all the different sides of Metallica.
You're one of the few heavy metal bands where sexism doesn't feature a lot, and you don't appear to live the excessive heavy metal cliche type lifestyle, but you still get tarred with the same brush.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of people that just generalize a lot in heavy metal, and a lot of people that are just very ignorant to the fact that within the heavy metal world or configuration, there are actually a lot of different bands that do different things. We've always been extremely bored with a lot of the metal cliches, being it sexism or partying or the Satanism or any of all these stupid things, and we've just preferred to avoid them, both in our lyrics and the way that we come across and so forth. It doesn't mean that we haven't lived that kind of silly lifestyle for a few years and so forth, which we did, but it's possible to enjoy some of these things without actually having to sing about it. You know what I mean? So we've just been more interested in just writing about different things and having kind of different approach that and avoid a lot of the metal cliches over the last couple of years. And it's just, I think when you're writing songs and trying to get things together, it's just a bit more of a challenge to try and just come up with things that are not always the obvious.
Has the fact that soft metalers like Def Leppard and Bon Jovi have brought music into the mainstream helped or hindered metal, in your opinion?
Helped or hindered? I don't think it's hindered anything. I'm not sure helped is the right word. So we might have to sort of say somewhere in between, maybe leaning slightly more towards help. I think, in America, in America, it's, obviously bands like Def Leppard and Bon Jovi and so forth are doing very well, selling a lot of records and bringing, I think, quote unquote, metal to up in, to public, people's minds and so forth, and people realize that there's a lot of things going on that maybe they hadn't heard about a couple years before. And from that point of view, when Metallica sort of comes along with that, and then there's Metallica who do things slightly different than these other bands, and so forth. We've always been doing our own thing, and I think really, that's why I say I don't really want to say help either, because, before Bon Jovi were around and stuff like that, we were still, doing very well on that level that we were at. So I think that our situation is one that's maybe, without sounding arrogant here, slightly more timeless, where, we just sort of do our own thing, sort of cruise in our own water, just do things one step at a time, our own way, where some of these other bands have to rely more on some of the things that are going on with what the current taste of mind is by the public and so forth like that.
How much of a connection do new metal bands like Metallica have to punk?
What we were very influenced by, which is called the new wave of British heavy metal, was sort of hard rock and metal's direct answer to that movement a few years ago, where metal sort of was brought back down to, from the 70s, you had all the dinosaur bands and everything was sort of very grand and rock stars and all that. And then in 1979-80, the new wave of British metal came about, and sort of everything was brought back down to the streets again, and bands were doing their own thing, and a little more aggressive and maybe a little faster and just a little more sort of ballsy and gutsy. And I think that's where most of our influences lie, more in that.
You seem to do about 99% of the band's interviews. Why is that?
Well, they say that I have the biggest mouth, which on questioning you can see is true.